Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari, and this is Great Big History Podcast, Progress, Backlash, Health, and Trauma. Oh boy, we're in for it. The New Kingdom Egypt, War in the Search of Peace. So when we left off with the Middle Kingdom, we talked about Ahmose and how Ahmose is going to build an army. He's going to kick out the Hyksos. He's going to reunite Egypt. He's going to be the superhero Egypt needed. But he's not going to recreate the Middle Kingdom. So what is the legitimacy for the New Kingdom? It is imperialism and war. Now, that may start you on the idea that they're going to be like the Assyrians, and they're not. Remember, this is still before the Bronze Age collapse. And the Egyptians are going to have a weird empire, is a way to think about it, because the Egyptians don't really like leaving Egypt, and we'll talk about that. But imperialism and war, they are going to use a chariot army. Now, remember, a chariot army is not native to Egypt. So the Egyptians are not going to build an Egyptian army. They don't know how to make one. So what they did was copy Mesopotamian technology. They made a Mesopotamian army in Egypt, which is a little weird, right? Because they don't have horses. They don't have the wheel. They don't have the infrastructure and the roads for this. They have a giant river. That's why they don't have the wheel, because you don't need to go on roads to ship stuff. You put it on the river. They don't have horses. And so they're copying from Mesopotamian technology to catch up. Maybe at some point somebody said, well, in the future we'll make a new army that's more Egyptian and that reflects our culture and our advantages. But they never did. So they use a chariot army, a Mesopotamian army, to crush their enemies. Then they occupy territories beyond Egypt's borders, and that is across the desert and up the river. And the idea of this is to protect Egypt by attacking people before you can be attacked. Take a look at the representation of Pharaoh now. It's not a pyramid. It's not a circus. It is a 12-foot tall chariot archer carving through his enemies like he's Neo in The Matrix or Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian. He is just he's Wolverine. So how is the Pharaoh represented? The Pharaoh is the general-in-chief, rejecting the roles of the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom. In art, Pharaoh becomes this 12-foot tall, commands the chariot all by himself. Remember, you need a driver. Not in art, you don't. Not Pharaoh. Pharaoh is so awesome, he does it with his hips. Other Egyptians are there as role players. Look at the Egyptians, fanning him in case he gets sweaty. Right? He's got the gods. See the ravens above his head? He's got giant horses. He's got animals that are eating his enemies. Look at this. This is also how you know the Egyptians didn't see themselves as African, but saw themselves as different, because this is Pharaoh. This is actually King Tut waging war against Nubians. And look at the skin color. Now remember, they didn't attach significance, like value, to that. The Nubians weren't Egyptian not because they're black-skinned, but because they're not Egyptian. But the fact that they painted them different skin colors tells you that they see themselves differently. What is the advantage of New Kingdom's legitimacy? And you can see how big this empire gets. Now, I know if you look on the map, a lot of that includes desert, so that's not really important. But you could see how far down into Africa it goes. And see those, the one, in Roman numerals, the two eyes, the three eyes, those are cataracts. Those are blockages. That's the end of empires. Like, you should hit the first cataract and stop. They're going to go to the second cataract, and then the third cataract, then the fourth cataract, then the fifth They are going so far upriver, they are not letting even the Nile stop them. That's how far they're going. In the Levant, in the Middle East, that word Canaan is going a little too high. Tyre and Sidon are not part of Canaan and never have been, and it's definitely not part of, near Damascus. Canaan is much smaller than that. It's that little space between Gaza, because Gaza is Palestine. Gaza is the land of the Philistines, and Tyre is the land of the Phoenicians. It's Phoenicia. So Canaan is kind of the space between those. But this is also pre-Bronze Age collapse, so it's not the land of the Hebrews yet. So, okay. It's the Philistines haven't actually shown up yet. So there's that. But look at how far it goes. It goes all the way north to the mountains, right? It's banging into the upper Euphrates, where the Mesopotamians are. It's banging into the mountains where the Hittites are. That's why that line is like straight. Those are the mountains. The Tarsus Mountains, the Cilician Mountains. So, this is big. The advantage is that it worked. It was by using Egyptian money to quick make an army, to copy an army, to not have to go through the iterations of making your own. When you added A+ leaders, plus Mesopotamian chariots, you got Egypt as a great power. It is safe. It is wealthy. It is one of the big three with the Hittites and Babylon, and able to fight them as equals. Plus, Egypt becomes sophisticated with all the new cultural ideas that coming into Egypt from Africa and Mesopotamia. You get diversity in Egypt for the first time. Now, remember, people came to Egypt. Africans came down the river. Phoenicians came to the delta. But for most people, you could live your entire life and never meet a foreigner. Now, Egyptians are leaving Egypt as part of these armies. They're bringing stuff back with them. You get diversity for the first time. And what you get is new knowledge, new technology, even drugs are entering Egypt. And so let's talk about some drugs. We got beer. Beer. Now, beer was already existing in Egypt. We also get the blue lotus flower. The lotus flower becomes famous in the Odyssey as the land of the lotus eaters. It's like a marijuana mellow high. You kind of ate it or mixed it. And it gave you this kind of, whoa, man, hippie sleepiness. It relaxed you. It was also a minor painkiller because you kind of didn't care about the pain. And remember, these are farmers, so they hurt all the time. Their backs hurt, their legs hurt. They get injuries from tools and from the thorns and from animal bites. And so, this is the land of the lotus eaters in the Odyssey. It's yeah, right? So that stuff already existed. Coming into Egypt is opium. It's called the joy plant. It's from Sumer. Now, Sumer is getting it from Bactria, from Afghanistan, from the nomadic peoples of Central Asia. But Sumer starts planting it real early, and it's a pain relief. Opium is one of the great pain relievers humans have ever come up with, but it also gives you sleep. The other thing is you could get high from it, from opium and opium derivatives, but it's sleep. It's a numbing high. Whereas the blue lotus flower is this kind of mellow, hey. Opium is you don't want to feel anything. This is why this tells you something about why it becomes the drug of the post-2010s in the United States, especially in poor parts of Appalachia and the Midwest. It tells you what these people, why would they be addicted to fentanyl or heroin, these opium derivatives, the opioids? Because they're in pain. They're either in emotional or physical pain, or maybe both. And what they want is not to feel anything. They don't want cocaine, so they're feeling up and up and up. They don't even want marijuana. Which is suppressing. They want to feel nothing. And so opium was also used for euthanasia. And you may go, whoa, whoa, whoa. But remember, one, death isn't that bad of a thing, especially in Egypt. And two, they understood that there are times when people are beyond saving, when there are times when people are living in such pain that they don't want to be alive. And so you would have beer and some opium and go into a sleep and done. Right? And so this is for old people with dementia. This is for people with awful cancers and infections. Remember, medicine is not, that helpful. So you do what you can medically, then you go to your rituals and your interventions of the gods. And if that doesn't help, okay, what are you going to do? Suffer? Opium was a way for people not to suffer. And so we see even in ancient Egypt is this desire to reduce pain. Also, there's coffee and chat. Both come from Ethiopia. Both were chewed. Now, there's an argument over how much coffee is coming in, because there's it wasn't discovered to the Arabs later on, and that's coffee as a drink. That's the filtering of coffee. But the idea that there's this nut, there's this berry called coffee, and people come from Ethiopia, right? They come from the ridge valley of Ethiopia. Humans start in this place, and you're telling me nobody looked at that little bit? They dug up roots, right? They dug up a cucumber. You're telling me they didn't look at this berry and try it and go, woo, I got, 20 minutes later, they're. So no. So this stuff is coming up from Africa, down the Nile River. Chat is the same thing. It's a leaf that you kind of chew. It's kind of like snuff. You put it in your cheek, and it's caffeine. It gives you energy. It gets you moving. Woohoo, woohoo, woohoo. Now, is this the most efficient way of using these drugs? No, but that's what they did. So you get stuff. As your empire expands, not only are they bringing in trade and money and knowledge, they're bringing in drugs, new ways of doing old things. The disadvantage of the new kingdom's legitimacy is A+ kings are required, but they're hard to find. They're just hard to find. I mean, there's a great article in the Harvard Crimson, which is a student newspaper of Harvard. And its headline is the average grade of a Harvard student is A-. And the subheading is yeah, sure. Okay. And it's look, guy, come on. I know we're paying $100,000 a year, but you see the people in your classes, you think they're all A- students? Everybody's an A- student? That's ridiculous. Of course they're not. But it's the idea that Harvard students are not average. Yeah, look around. Look around. Are you doing A- work? Or are you partying 5 days a week? I mean, come on. So like, how many Hall of Fame quarterbacks are there in the league, in the NFL at any one time? How many first-round Hall of Famers are in basketball right now? 3? 4? Right? I mean, that are sure, there's LeBron, there's Steph Curry, there's KD, and there might be one or two other guys I'm not thinking of, And I'm not saying there aren't great players in the league. Of course there are. There are some very good quarterbacks. But first round Hall of Famers? Like, right now there's Patrick Mahomes. Right? I mean, now that's basically it. There might be the guy in Buffalo. He might grow into that role, maybe. I mean, I guess you could say Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers is a long way from his greatness, so I don't know anymore, right? But you got Patrick Mahomes. There you go. You got one. So how many A-plus kings can there possibly be? They'll get a few. They'll get a Tutmos. They'll get a Ramses. But they're hard to find. They're few and far between. Armies are also much more expensive than pyramids. And the money has to be found, either in taxes or in conquest. If you do not pay your army, they do not show up when they're called. If you do not pay the chariot makers, they don't make chariots. If you do not pay for horse training for the charioteers, they don't have horses ready to be attached to chariots. Like, you have to pay all of this money, and you have to pay it up front. So the taxes and the conquests constantly have to be found. And of course, people don't like paying taxes. And that brings us to the third part, which is Egyptians don't really like leaving Egypt. Egypt is the most awesome place in the ancient world. Why would I want to cross 2 deserts to go to Mesopotamia? Come on, really? I mean, the Phoenicians are fun, but I mean, come on. We're going to the mountains? I don't want to go see mountains. I got a giant river that makes me rich. I'm going to go to these poor mountain tribes and fight in mountain valleys at 10,000 feet altitude? Come on. That's not what I want to do. So Egyptians don't really like leaving Egypt, so the idea of getting them to pay for this is hard. Now, Thutmose III could invade Cana and be cheered. He could get 15,000, 20,000 men to join him. Ramses II could go all the way to Kadesh, which is on the near side of the mountains, and fight the Hittites. He could help a friend. Kadesh was an ally of the Egyptian pharaohs, but it's 800 miles away. It took them 6 months to get up there. And he could bring 30,000 men and 3,000 chariots. Just like Khufu could say, hey, can I get guys to work on my pyramid? And 50,000 people showed up. Ramses said, hey, I need to go help an ally who's far away. Who's coming with me? And 30,000 men and 3,000 chariots showed up. But how many Thutmoses, how many Ramses IIs are there? So most pharaohs are lazy. They're weak. So lazy pharaohs in this system have very little respect. They have very little power to motivate people. That's a problem. Because if the pharaoh doesn't look like they're going to help their allies, if they're going to stay home in Egypt, which again, remember, is well protected by deserts, why should anyone take the Egyptian pharaoh seriously? So it's a constant need to recreate your legitimacy. So what happens in a new kingdom? Well, it has a series of weak kings with short reigns. You get 6 kings, and this is amazing. 6 kings between Ramses III and his grandson. Now, there should be 1, Ramses IV. That's not what happens. There are 6 kings in 1 generation. Is that terrible? No. I mean, is it bad? Yes. But is it the end of the new kingdom? No. Right? Because you've got other kings, Ramses II, you got the Tutmoses, who built up a lot of legitimacy, right? And they built a big empire. It's not going to collapse overnight. Even a couple of weak kings aren't going to destroy an empire, right? One bad president won't destroy America, right? Because we have 250 years of presidents, right? Some great, some not so great, you know? Most mediocre, you don't even know who they are. But, like, one bad president's not going to destroy America. Unless something else bad happens. And that is the Bronze Age collapse. The Bronze Age collapse means everyone is on the move. And so what happens is Egypt gets invaded by the sea. That's new. They weren't expecting sea peoples to show up. Their wars were with the Africans up the river and with the Babylonians across the desert. They're not preparing for an invasion from sea. No. Go to Buffalo, New York. Go to northern Vermont and see how defended we are against the Canadians. We're not. Why? Because nobody expects a Canadian invasion of Vermont or Niagara Falls. So you're not ready for it. And that's not kind of like who could see the apocalypse happening. Like, I have some students who are like, oh, the new kingdom, when they write their essays, like, the new kingdom didn't see the end of the world coming. Well, who does? I mean, let's be honest. The dinosaurs didn't know a giant asteroid was going to hit them, right? Neither do we. You know, no one sees the end of the world coming. And so new peoples show up because they got pushed out of Greece. They got pushed out of Eastern and Southern Europe. They got pushed out of other places. And they took to the sea and they went looking for a homeland. This is the Philistines. These are people who are Greek Vikings. You know, the Philistines and the Greek Vikings are different peoples, but they kind of are the same milieu. You know, Dorian-speaking peoples who were invading Greece at the time. You know, so we got these people, but they're coming with iron weapons. That's new technology. It's not necessarily better than the bronze. It keeps an edge longer, right? It's harder metal, right? But it's also shittier. It's a shittier metal. Iron has a lot of impurities in it. I mean, I do Swedish cannons, right? I do the whole, one of the reasons why the Swedes are able to build such a firepower army in the 1650s, you know, with so many cannon. They have more cannon than several of the other great powers combined, is because they had access to the best, purest iron in Europe at the time. And so iron is like, it's cheap, it's available, it works, but it's not sophisticated. It's harder, so it keeps its edge longer, but it's also heavier. You know, and so there's advantages to iron weapons, but it's not like, oh my God, these people had an insurmountable new technology. Like the chariot was an insurmountable new technology. Iron weapons, it's an advantage, but it's the real advantage is the end of the world and just the amount of people, the waves of people who keep coming. And so the new kingdom is just overrun. And you get the loss of legitimacy. You lose legitimacy because people say, you can't protect us. Here's one of the things. Look at all these people coming by sea. Look at all these people coming by sea. And there's the Egyptian pharaoh standing 12 feet tall. He's got the gods on his side. He's got a small army of archers. right? It has him murdering the sea peoples coming, but there's just, look at how many more there are. There's like 5 Egyptians, and a lot of them are dead at the feet of the Pharaoh. So it's still the Pharaoh. It's like a last stand. So the new kingdom is overrun. And from this point on, other empires will control Egypt. The new kingdom will die in blood and fire. And what will happen is there'll be a small recovery, but Egypt will be invaded by African kings who will take over. And they will become the 26th dynasty. Or 25th dynasty, excuse me. And they will rule until the Assyrians come. And then the Assyrians will rule basically until they get overthrown by an Egyptian dynasty, which will then, for a brief period of time, Egypt will be independent, and then it will be overrun by Cambyses and the Persians. And then they will be overrun by the Greeks, and the Greeks will become the Romans. That will be Cleopatra, who loses to Octavian, and the Romans take over. And then the Romans become the Byzantines in Eastern Europe, and then the Byzantines get overrun by the Arabs. And today, Egypt is an Arab country, speaking an Arab language, worshiping an Arab god. So Egypt, the richest place in the ancient world, it loses its independence from this point on. It loses its control over its own future. And that's kind of sad. That's kind of sad for the new kingdom went down fighting. But it was the apocalypse. So what are you going to do? It's the end there's a reason why it's called the end of the world. As you know it. REM, right? It's the end of the world as I know it. And I feel fine. Well, people in New Kingdom Egypt didn't feel fine because it was the end of the world. So, thank you. Be safe. Take care.